In the AI future, organizations will deploy teams of agents that will plan, interoperate, negotiate, and execute. Today, we're joined by Susan Emerson from Salesforce to explore their transformation from CRM provider to AI powerhouse. AgentForce is their catalyst for this innovation, helping organizations move from experimentation to production, all while enabling collaboration and managing risks. I'm Salim Hasham. Welcome to the AI Vantage. Let's get into it. Beyond the AI hype lies your next big opportunity. I'm Salim Hasham, Director of AI Transformation at Google Cloud, where I bring more than 2 decades of working with CEOs and their leadership teams to deliver business impact. Join me as I sit down with the brightest minds from Google, our partners, and customers to share real-world stories and proven strategies for AI success. This is your seat at the table. Welcome to the AI Vantage. Well, Susan, thanks for joining me.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. So happy to be here.
Absolutely. So before we get into anything,
Yeah.
I think of all of the LinkedIn bios I've read, the first 3 lines of yours have been quite literally the most captivating. So one of the things we like to do is sort of humanize the person, so the human of AI. And to summarize, and I don't want to spoil the story, but a long and storied career in technology and AI, 2 IPOs, 3 M&As, and on your 7th startup, acquired by Salesforce.
Right.
Help us just ground in your history. It is truly fascinating.
I like building new things, and I like things that are usually at the edge of most people understanding them. So like joining early stage startups where it's a new product area, a new business area. I refer to it as the dogs watching TV phase of not having product market fit yet. I love that phase of building a new company. So that's how I ended up in so many different startups. And then I ended up at a startup that was acquired by Salesforce. So it's all about like having a passion for doing something new that hasn't been fully sorted.
Fantastic. And from there to SVP and essentially the wizard behind all AI products. Like, how did that happen?
Oh, I'm part of a larger team. I wouldn't ascribe all of that to me. So how did that happen? Like when I came into Salesforce, I was at the intersection of building new products and bringing them to market, which I've essentially been able to facilitate through my whole time here. Now, in terms of my role presently with the AgentForce and AI team, it comes on the back of having been part of the foundational teams that built our analytics and our machine learning products. And so when we got the memo loud and clear from Mark, you got 90 days go, we had just newly announced a CEO of AI, and I slacked her that day. I said, I think you need me on the team.
Fantastic. And for our audience, and our audience are a mixture of essentially technologists, partners, customers, and those that are sort of looking to adopt AI. The evolution of Salesforce itself, I think, is quite a story. So if you can help us understand sort of Salesforce is sort of the preeminent provider of data, then got into the machine learning business, and then now we have AgentForce.
Well, it's an interesting question. Like back to like when I was acquired at Salesforce, it was one cloud. It was Sales Cloud, right? It was 2,000 people, and now we have like so many lines of business cloud: sales, service, marketing, commerce, analytics. Not hundreds, but over a dozen industry clouds. So it's a big ecosystem, and a number of years ago, we started making investments in data to power these workflows and these business processes that are inherent in all of those things, whether it's doing marketing use cases and segmentation and understanding the profile of someone as you engage with them, to other types of operational data that will help know the customer in a sales engagement. So the data transformation has been ongoing for many years, and the AI stuff just layers like straight on top of that. And I was at a customer meeting a couple months ago, and they had a similar question, but it was a question that demanded an answer in terms of how do you see yourself? And it was like 2 things they gave us. Like, are you an application company that does CRM and you're bolting on AI and data? Or are you now an AI and data company that has a whole bunch of business applications? And I mean, I think you can argue it either way, but one of the other things we would say is like, we're a digital labor platform that automates all of these workflows, whether it's human in the loop in these business systems that run your business at Salesforce or interacting with your customers in the outside world.
And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, AI fundamentally changes the nature of everything.
Yeah.
And so I think thinking of it in terms of whether you're a provision company, a vendor, a knowledge company, these things are, I think, antiquated. So before we get into the details, and I do want to talk to you about what we think the shared horizon looks like. Let's start with maybe demystifying AI. There's a lot of noise in the market. As you're talking to senior customers and you're talking to the ecosystems broadly, what's your sense? How real is it? How prepared are customers to think about AI?
I think there's lots of statistics out there that show adoption in many ways, like all these studies that say X% of companies have something in production. So I think there's certainly a fair amount of hype, but it's not hype that this stuff is not real. There is a lot of noise in terms of where do I start and why. So a lot of the conversations we get into is the where do we start and why conversation, right. And then what are my peers doing, and then what does good look like? And if there's a step function of what does good look like, how can I identify where do I sit on that step? What are the attributes of that? And what do I need to do to get to the next one? So we do a lot of that kind of work with organizations. But one of the things that's different about having business systems like Salesforce, like we are grounded in business workflow that is happening Correct. Through our products today, whether it's implicit or actual workflow, whether it's a sales process or a servicing and interacting with customers and so forth. And so we have this a really unique opportunity to be grounded with the point of view of what the hero agent is and how to accelerate, the use case. And I work with a lot of industries, so I have sort of a general framework of talking about use case categorization and the types of benefits people receive from them. And this also sort of tracks like history from the dawn of time 3 years ago when we all started doing, prompt engineering and generative AI. But these productivity like use cases where you've got a human that's, doing a sales process or a human that's doing, customer support. What can you do to use AI to bring productivity to the foreground? Whether that productivity is automation of tasks that are mundane, or that productivity is getting data to them at the right time, at the right point of utility in a way that it's useful, not just sort of raw. So we have all these great use cases for, sales and service to help drive the productivity and take the friction out of all the processes that you are running on Salesforce. And then the second category are all these customer-facing use cases, and they tend to unpack to things like answer questions with knowledge. Don't make me work too hard on your website. Like, I just have a question. Don't, get it to me. Or maybe kind of going to the next step is not like these brag bots or knowledge, interactions, but I need the status of something. Tell me the status of my order, of my return, of my delivery, of my appointment, of my loan, of my whatever. So, bringing all of that back office information, trapped in company systems very easily to a consumer. Or the next step, initiating those processes in terms of, I would like to submit that claim for whatever process or things like that. So we do a lot of work with companies in that space for these consumer experiences. And then some of the big brand companies are really starting to do some interesting thinking about what does that commerce concierge in the future really look like? It's not a search bar here and a chat bot there and a field of vision that doesn't interact with it. It is immersive and adaptive and multimodal, and that's really exciting. So that's sort of like a consumer like facing stuff. And all of these things sort of track over time. Like I'll experiment with my employees first. Here's what I'm comfortable with my externally facing market applications. And then the background agents where rather than relying on a human that initiates this thing, whether the human is a consumer or an employee, what does the data tell me I should be doing? And how does this sense and response signal start with a really good data trigger and an agentic workflow that pulls the human back into the loop at the right place and right time? So like that's sort of the scale of the types of use cases we're doing in all the different industries. We'll use different words to describe what the use case is.
Let's unpack that a little bit. So in the near term, and I think you're absolutely right. I see it with my clients as well. A shift from what I call human augmentation, write my email from me, towards sort of planned reasoning.
Yep.
Go understand my inventory.
Or like what is best practice? Exactly. Like what does good look like? Yep.
Yeah, and so the promise of Agentic, I think is exactly where you're heading, is reasoning to action in my sense, right? So whether human in the loop or human out of the loop.
Yeah.
So AgentForce, I think, is really sort of assertive on what the agentic future is. And it's about planned, reasoned execution.
Yep.
And you've developed Atlas as your reasoning engine. And so give us maybe some flavor of how real that is today.
Oh, I mean, we've had a reasoning engine in the product from day one. And I guess maybe reasoning engines only got cool to talk about earlier this year with the DeepSeek white paper, but it's been at the core of what we do. And maybe even like to take it a step further, when I'm talking to our employees internally, like I do take care to talk about things that are like prompt engineering use cases, which are really different from reasoning use cases.
Correct.
And so just to remind them that a reasoning engine is something that takes input, it categorizes it and understands intent, then it creates an AI orchestrated plan, and it adapts as all the information is filtering to it over that interaction. And that stuff is here today. Like, so.
And so you said, and so I know the technology is essentially there, the componentization is there. Some would argue the interoperability is there.
Yeah.
Are you seeing those happen in the wild?
The interoperability.
Well, we'll get to the interoperability
okay.
specifically, but are you seeing truly agentic workflows as opposed to it's generative, but it doesn't require a prompt?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Both for internal employees and with customer-facing applications and with these processes that are triggered with data. Absolutely. So to give an example of customer-facing applications, like, someone on your website asking questions about an order and how to return or what is the thing, that's all a reasoning engine, figuring out the intent, then figuring out what is the particular protocol it's going to go call and execute. So that stuff we've been doing for over a year. That is the promise and the actuality of AgentForce. In terms of like internal use cases for employees, I'll give an example. I was traveling last week through the Nordics, and I happened to meet with a whole bunch of insurance companies that just sort of stacked up this way. And one of the kind of consistent examples of what people were doing, well, they already use Salesforce as their backbone for prosecuting, understanding risk, creating a proposal, issuing a, doing all their underwriting processes. So to have these things that are agentically kicked off, here's a body of knowledge. It might be the property, or it might be, whatever the underwriting bundle is. And then having AI assess it for risk, assess it for insurability, take some decisioning steps. And then based on those decisioning steps, it could be a, sorry, or it could be, let's create the proposal, let's get it to the underwriter. Here's everything you need to do, underwriter. This is the data that's missing that I couldn't supply for you. You better check out these things before you finally assess this risk. I mean, that stuff is happening today.
Fantastic. And then let's maybe press on one more thing before we get to what I really want to talk about, which is what we think the agentic future is.
Yeah.
And I think Salesforce, and in my conversations with you, I think there's a healthy realization that it cannot be a closed ecosystem.
Oh, yeah.
Nor can it be an ungoverned ecosystem. And so if you think about every large enterprise, and many small ones, I think, are digitally similar. You'll have a CRM, you'll have an ERP, you may have a facilities and ticketing or a process and logistics ticketing. These are the beating hearts of business.
The beating hearts of the enterprise.
And so there's a world where you may say, hey, everybody's going to develop their own agents, or build them, or rent them, or buy them. But in a world of agentic, how do these things all work together?
I think like oftentimes this question comes with build versus buy. And like I have to like always pick a fight with versus because it's usually an and.
Correct.
Because there's just so much opportunity here. But in terms of like how these things interop, this is one of the things I'm really excited about. Like from a Salesforce perspective, we are often, the beating heart of these workflows and these processes. We're not every application stack inside an enterprise, as you mentioned, ERP or billers or other types of things. And so having these agents to agent that can communicate, with each other and kind of shift like what we have in our systems today before this, A2A and all these agentic interoperability capabilities is that we put all the cognitive load on the humans to know where to go and why.
Right.
So with these agents, with the great reasoning engine as control plane in the middle of this stuff, all that friction gets like out of our systems and these things become more seamless. And so, we work with Google a lot on these things. And, I love these applications where I've got a user that's sitting in Salesforce, and whether it's a sales or a service use case, that human augmented with data and agents from other places is always going to be smarter, better, more powerful. So to use stuff like A2A to take that friction out of the process is something that's really exciting.
Let's clarify that.
And I can give some examples too.
So our audience may not understand A2A, but I also want to add
Yeah.
The concept of zero copy in there, because I think they're two parts of the same problem.
Yeah. All right. So the concept of zero copy is we don't really require you to rematerialize your data in our data assets to be able to activate them in Salesforce. And so GCP and many other data properties we have this partnership with. And as we all know, like AI really wants great data to be grounded. So with this zero data copy network, and here's my example. Like my example is large telco with lots of devices out in the marketplace. All these devices are kicking off IoT. All this IoT is incredibly valuable. It might tell us when we need to service it, when we need to upsell, when it's not being used, so we should do retention. Like whatever the use case is, this data is really powerful in the constructs of a business application. Yeah. That IoT data is not going to be in a Salesforce like opportunity record or something like that. It's going to be in something like GCP.
Correct.
So why don't you have like all of that lovely data sitting there, but leveraged without moving it and copying it and rematerializing it and resecuring it and repermissioning it. And beyond that, having an AI agent sitting on top of it that has been gifted with privileges as well. So like in one of the demo examples I built, like as soon as we launched AgentForce, I used this telco example, and I've got the control plane of someone servicing a case in Salesforce and taking the friction out of a service operator knowing that they have to go to other places. It's just right there in Salesforce, but yet we're leveraging the back office of Vertex and GCP, that kind of thing.
And so just to maybe simplify that a bit,
Yeah.
the notion that A2A allows agents to work together,
Yeah.
and agents within the enterprise or from different companies?
Yes. So like there's a whole bunch of innovation that can happen here. Like it can be, inside the four walls of an organization where they have lots of different tech stacks, right? It could be between two organizations where they have a business process that needs to be facilitated. It can be in the consumer world with my agent that knows me, with the agent from the brand that I'm trying to engage with. Like, so all of these things, like it's no longer B2B and B2C and B2B2C, it's A to A, like in terms of not just with the protocol, but in the consumer or the business marketplace as well. Yeah.
And so I think underpinning that is the big question around data, because we don't want data proliferation.
Yeah.
We don't want the risk, we don't want the regulatory overhead.
Yeah.
And so zero copy, I think, is this sort of thing that we're working on together that says actually one instance can access the data, doesn't have to copy it,
That's right.
but can infer from it.
Yep.
And that's fantastic. It almost opens the gates.
It's also not that new.
Control,
We've been doing that with you guys for quite some time. Back when I was in my machine learning days at Salesforce, we had that zero data copy, and I could put machine learning models right on top of like the Google data and things like that. So we've been leveraging it for a long time. Maybe it's a best kept secret. Yeah. So thank you for allowing us to talk about it for a moment.
No, and I think it's ready for prime time. I think it was the
It is totally ready for prime time. Yeah.
And so let's maybe sort of push the horizons.
It is its time. Like this is the time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so let's push the horizons with that at the core, because I think managing risk, particularly hallucination, distillation risks, all of the things that we read about. And so the future, as I'm seeing it, as we're talking, is enterprises where you've got fleets of agents. Mm-hmm. Those agents will have an orchestrator brain, this sort of notion of the Atlas type structure, that essentially will almost autonomously plan, reason, execute, involve a human when they need to.
Yep.
Those agents will work together within the enterprise, but most importantly, through A2A and MCP and other frameworks. An agent from one organization can now actually handshake and negotiate with agents from the other. Mm-hmm. And so how far are we away from that?
I think we're all closer than we think. Like everything about this space, like everyone will say out loud, it's going faster than they thought. But just little examples of maybe 6 months ago, I would talk to a lot of technologists, and you would have conversations about, we're going to pick one thing for the whole enterprise. Like, I need the one thing. Yeah. Like 3 months later, it's like, no, I need interop. Like, so I think one of the things that we're always like, reminding people about is that like walled gardens are tough in this world. Like you really need to be future-proofed and things like that. But this agent-to-agent stuff is, it's here today. So are some of the other protocols as well. But trying to think of some good examples of interop that we're doing. I'm working with with an airline where the interop is, they can do a lot of things with unstructured data around questions about the flight, the baggage policy, what happens when I lose my luggage, and what do you reimburse me for? But when they really want to get into it and start doing things like you're having a bad day because of operations or weather, like how do we do A to A with these booking systems in a way that are seamless and customer facing? So this is stuff we're working on right now. And that's across different vendor stacks, as you would imagine.
And so we think about sort of the broad strokes of a transformation. I mean, it's a pretty complicated thing to get done, right? And so let's assume you've understood the business problem that you want to solve, and now you're thinking about re-engineering the value chain. So you have an opportunity to reimagine it.
Yeah.
How do you balance sort of the need for, here's what agentic AI can do, understanding that it's essentially probabilistic.
Yep.
Here's where you have to throw in machine learning or maybe more traditional processes. How do you then sort of embed that within one single orchestration layer so you can manage it? How do you think about the risks? And so if you think about all of this as the anatomy of a transformation, from your experience and things that you've seen that have gone well, like what's the recipe that people should think about?
The first thing I would say is like a lot of people start with the pure play productivity gains, which is great, and they all find them, in double digits, and that's great. And on the back of that, they learn everything that they need to take the next step, and then I'll come to the pure play transformationist. And so by even taking a hero use case that might seem pedestrian but is bringing a lot of productivity, you learn everything you need to know about LLMs. You get to figure out your stance on observability. You have to go tangle with risk and compliance to understand what is permitted and what is allowed. You probably go through a big exercise of what is your use case inventory that aligns with your value prop. You're probably also starting to think about what does your workforce in the future look like? What does the worker of the future need to be successful? So there's so much that you learn even on the back of a simple productivity thing. But in terms of the transformations, we work with a lot of organizations where, CEO sees the transformation from day one. Yeah. And it is more the burn the business, burn the boats in the harbor sort of business model. And they're fun as well. And, the hallmarks of those types of transformations are very interesting. And they're also maybe, I'll give you an example of same industry, but two different examples. And this is a financial institution that we're working with, commercial lending, wealth management, that kind of stuff. Two parts of their business. One part of the business is established and old, has people, process, and all that gets wedded to those people and processes when you have big infrastructure, right? We know how we do stuff. We do it this way, right? And in exercises like that, we did some things where we brought all the stakeholders in the room. We actually kept the technologists out because the technologists at that point would be but do you know? And so we just whiteboarded everything that was friction. And then we married, what is the reality of how we can go fast with the known issues with the operational thing. But that whiteboarding and blue skying of all the friction we totally wanted to take out, as opposed to another organization I was telling you, we were in the prep session where this is a CIO who refuses a use case when people don't show headcount reduction because she knows that's not transformation. So there's things like that where you can run these programs. And then the same bank had a greenfield opportunity. And that was one where they didn't take operational things that they knew today. They said, we have digital labor. We're not building software. We're not building agents. We are building a digital workforce. And this digital workforce of the future needs to be a marketer, a relationship manager, a risk underwriter, a loan officer. What does that spliced bit of work look like in a digital agent? And to take that into new marketplaces where it didn't have the legacy, if you will, of the way things go. So there's just so many different ways to approach this stuff. And we do these things sometimes of thinking about just not just an agentic framework of what step are you on and how do you get to the next step in terms of being the agentic enterprise, but also people are part of this equation and they all come to it with ways they can engage. And I was telling you about a framework that we adopt from Jeffrey Moore, Crossing the Chasm, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And in this space here, there's the pure play technologists. Who these guys are. They want to fiddle, they want to learn. As soon as you say something, they're let's build it hands-on. And they are really fun to engage with in terms of learning and understanding the full potential. And then there's the visionary, and they see trapped value immediately. And so it's that trapped value conversation, and then you get the permission internally to break down the barriers. And then, there's the pragmatist, which is a little bit of the but, and show me the ROI, and show me 500 people who are doing it like this. And so across all these different personas, just engaging with them with the right kind of conversation that helps them understand the state of the art of the technology and how it can untrap the value or bring the productivity or burn the boats in the harbor, whatever the vision is.
That's fascinating. So what I'm hearing, I think, is the archetypes are about maybe velocity and depth.
Yeah, and maybe risk profile too.
And risk profile.
Yeah, velocity and depth in terms of seeing a future, and then maybe what their background is in terms of what they're, what they're hired to protect or build.
And so maybe as a series of lessons, what's consistent across all of them is don't start with the technology. Reimagine, the business, because ultimately incrementalizing a bad process.
It's not going to. Well, you'll learn a lot, but
right. And so take the time to reimagine.
Yes.
I'm not going to say the art of the possible. The value chain.
Yeah.
Agentic.
Yeah, the trapped value. We use that phrase a lot. Like, where's the trapped value? Where's the friction? It's the same place. Like, whiteboard all the parts that are messy, all that type of stuff.
And so that seems to be consistent. So reimagine the business.
Put a
have
process
business
like
case.
learning engine on top of it in terms of,
clear metrics. Think of it as a change program. Then eventually get to the technology. But in the technology, be clear, what is traditional, meaning, machine learning, deterministic processes have a part to play. Be very clear where probabilistic processes, I think, can contribute. Be agentic in how you think about it. Be open to the notion that you're going to have to interoperate, share data. But I love the way you said it, is if that's the recipe of a transformation, depending on your leadership appetite, you can either be
meet them at the mark.
So burn the bridges for those who have the risk tolerance to do that or are digitally native. Be incremental for those who need to build trust and experience. That's fantastic.
And you mentioned determinism. Like, one of the things that we've learned over the last year of agent building is that, you can get pretty far backing an LLM into the corner, and the reasoning engines are quite good. And as you know, our CEO loves Gemini 3, but there are just times and places where you want good old determinism. So one of the things that we just, added into our reasoning engine is something we call hybrid or adaptive reasoning. And so that allows people to blend the probabilistic with the deterministic in the ways that they need to, either because their risk profile is such that they don't want it to operate that way, or it's just a faster way to an outcome without over scripting and engineering like a reasoning engine and LLM. So that's going to unlock a lot of use cases, and I think a lot of speed for folks.
Correct. It's very sensible, because I think time to value, cost per process, like all of these things do say use the right algorithm for the right use. That's fascinating conversation. So I'm going to get to my favorite part of this.
Okay.
And we usually ask our guests a secret question, but
a secret question.
But you're special, so I'm going to ask you two.
Okay.
Okay. So let's begin with maybe a broad question. So if AI could be used in everyday life, what would you want it to do?
In everyday life, what would I want to do? I can tell you how I use it. Like, I can do the boring stuff of how I do it in my day job at work. And you can probably imagine like all the ways I use it to drive productivity and take friction out. But like the stuff that's been really fun for me is, we were talking about living in New York and during COVID, I bought a money pit to spend my weekends renovating a house in upstate New York.
Otherwise known as real estate passion.
Yeah, real estate passion. And what's been really helpful with AI for me over the last 6 months is using it as my team of decorators. So like anytime I have an idea of what I might do and like, what would that be if I used walnut, or what if I used iron, or like, what if the patio was this size, or what if it was that? Like, so decorator, like my personal decorator, has been really fun. In terms of imagining some of these transformations.
Yeah.
So that's been fun and
assistant.
personal. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. All right, let's sort of stretch the boundaries on the next question. If AI could solve a problem, what would you want it to solve?
Yeah. I would kind of go with the, I'm a Lex Friedman fan in terms of watching the podcast, and like, is life out there kind of stuff is always like, that. But I'm going to go with like in my day job, my role with generative and agentic AI is automating the enterprise and creating amazing experiences for consumers, right? And what I am really interested and hopeful for is the potential this stuff has in medicine. And so, the frontier of the brain is still not well known to us. Like, some of the state of the art that we have for things like depression and bipolar and Alzheimer's it's not really that state of the art. And so I think when AI gets to the point of helping us understand, the chemistry and the math and the biology and the physics of all the stuff that is happening there, and can bring protocols and therapies, I think that's going to be really interesting.
That's fine. And we're not too far off. I think human-brain
I hope so.
interfaces are moving at quite the pace.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's
Well, and that's how our journey started at Salesforce. We got the stop reading white papers about protein folding from you guys and start building software.
Exactly. Solve the problem rather than cogitate.
Yeah.
Susan, it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been fun. Yep.
And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the AI Vantage.
Thank you for tuning in to the AI Vantage. Be sure to follow us on social. If you're interested in learning more about the Google Partner Ecosystem, visit the address on the screen below. Remember, the best way to predict the future is to build it. See you next time.